Breaking news, this has just come into us here at MSNBC regarding Otto Warmbier. Of course, that's the American college student who was imprisoned by North Korea back in 2017, later released and returned to the U.S., but he did die shortly after his return. President Trump just Thursday said Kim Jong-un gave him assurances he knew nothing about Warmbier, and the president took him at his word. Now the Warmbier family has released a statement after those comments from the president. So let's go to Hans Nichols at the White House. Hans, a lot of people on Capitol Hill, including members of the president's own party, critical of the president's statement. What does Otto Warmbier's family have to say about it?
Well, Chris, good morning. Warmbier's family is breaking their silence, and they are breaking with President Donald Trump. Remember, just 14 months ago, they sat in the First Lady's box during the State of the Union. Let me read their statement to you here. It is crystal clear. They say, "We have been respectful during this summit process. Now we must speak out. Kim and his evil regime are responsible for the death of our son, Otto. Kim and his evil regime are responsible for unimaginable cruelty and inhumanity. No excuse or lavish praise can change that. Thank you, Fred and Cindy Warmbier." You know, let's listen to what the president actually said when he was asked about this in Hanoi just a few hours ago.
I don't believe he knew about it.
Did he tell you that he did not, did Kim Jong-un tell you?
He felt badly about it. I did speak to him. He felt very badly, but he knew the case very well, but he knew it later. In those prisons and those camps, you have a lot of people, and some really bad things happened to Otto. Some really, really bad things.
Why are you
But he tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word.
You know, Chris, what's interesting about that is the president's almost contradicting what he himself said at his State of the Union in 2018. That's when he said the dictatorship. He didn't say dictator, but he said the dictatorship was responsible for sentencing Otto Warmbier to 15 years in prison. You know, this is such an emotional issue. You remember the president previously had talked about how close he was to the Warmbier family and how he felt a great connection with them. Now you have members of his own party, including Senator Rob Portman from Ohio, where the Warmbier family is based, speaking out against the president, saying that this is simply unacceptable.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.